Hello and welcome everyone to our online conversation on how to waste less food. Whether you are a professional, a foodie, or anyone else really, we are all making our food choices every day. Those choices makes a difference for our health and the environment. And today we will be joined by 3 renowned chefs who will share their perspective on zero waste issue. So we have Radhika Khandelwal, the chef and owner of several restaurants in Delhi. She's also an advocate for sustainability, and she's a member of World Chefs and Chefs Manifesto. We also have Daniel Schneider, who is a regional corporate chef at Electrolux Professional. He also led various workshops and trainings to foster a zero-waste culture in professional kitchens. And last but not the least, we have Chris Koetke, who is a World Chef Chairman of Feed the Planet Committee, who has spent more than 20 years of his career to educate culinary professionals. And I'm Ekaterina Trofimova, and I will be your host for today, and I'm representing Electrolux Food Foundation. So let's get started. Tomorrow is the World Food Day, and we're celebrating the value of food today and learning the ways how not to waste it. And we all can do a little bit better. With 17% of all the food waste happening on the consumer level, we all need to contribute. Wasteless food, as well as a second chapter of our platform called replay.com, where you can learn so much more about sustainable cooking and eating. The platform has been developed together in the partnership with World Chefs, Electrolux Professional, and ISEC. Again, let's dig in. By the end of the session, you will have a time to ask your questions, so please make sure to submit them on the platform wherever you're watching this live stream. So I'm curious to know when the issue has actually really started. Was it always the issue with the food waste? Chris, with over 20 years of experience in the field, can you tell us a little bit more? How was it back then? Was it something on the curriculum that young professionals would learn about? What were they talking about back then? How was it?
Well, I have to say that when, I was in culinary education for a long time, for 20 years. And when we first started talking about sustainability, I mean, it wasn't even a word. And people would look at us like we were crazy and talking about food waste and all the other parts of sustainability, because back then what everybody thought is that, garbage kind of went somewhere, waste went somewhere, food waste went somewhere. We never thought about where it went. And, that was then. And over the last, 20 years, and really within the last 10 years, things have started to change. And today, I'm very happy to say that where once upon a time, nobody talked about sustainability in school, it wasn't a thing. Today, we have schools all over the world that have put sustainability into their curriculum, which means that all the students learn it. And really, if we think about that, that's the student. Those students are the future of our industry, the future of our business. And so when they learn about sustainability, they will be the ones that will carry the message forward and will make the change in the long term. I'm also really happy to say that Feed the Planet, World Chefs, we developed a curriculum all about sustainability, and we now have had thousands, many thousands of students and professionals who have learned about sustainability, and it's now changing the way that they work in their kitchens.
Thank you, Chris. And of course, raising awareness is such an important thing to do in order to help to solve the issue of the food waste in the first place. And Radhika, you organized a 45-day campaign that was called Be a Zero Waste Hero, that was raising awareness on such issues as climate change, hunger, biodiversity, and obviously the zero waste. So what kind of changes do you see after running this campaign? Did the audience, how did they react to it?
Initially, I was actually really apprehensive about how people were going to react to it because, like Chris said, a lot of people just think of food waste as garbage. However, it is just food, right? It is things which you can consume. Not wasting food has always been a part of our culinary heritage. And earlier people would take the time to connect with food, sit down, make little portions, etc. And with busy lifestyles, I think people just started consuming more, and that just led to more waste. People would buy things, put them in their fridge, not really know what to do with them, and they would just rot over there. I just wanted to share recipes, tips, tricks, and I wanted to learn from people as well. So basically, what the campaign did was it started a conversation, and it actually led to many, many good things.
Right. Thank you, Radhika. And Danielle, you worked so much in professional kitchens. Is there something that we can learn from your expertise and bring into our own homes in order not to waste less food?
Absolutely. There are multiple different things what we can really take home from a professional kitchen. So one of the things what could really change the way we are buying the food, for instance, is actually to plan out the week, for instance. Plan out the week, what you want to cook on what days, and this is how you purchase the food products. Because often you maybe only want to buy for Monday and Tuesday, and then you go another day and you buy something which is something you like, but maybe a day later you are not planning to eat it anymore. So to just have a little bit of a plan of what you want to produce throughout the week for yourself, for your kids, family, is already a really great starting point. Another one is, so in the kitchen we call it first in, first out. So I see a lot of fridges in homes. They are stuffed with so many things, and often the homeowner don't really know when they bought certain things, and all of a sudden it's expired, and what's going to happen? They throw it away. So being actually really aware of what you buy, when you bought it, and how you stock your fridge can really, really help you. So first in, first out means basically if you buy eggs and you buy a few days later a few more eggs, don't put the new ones in front of the old ones. So pull the old ones to the front, put the new ones in the back. So you're using the older products in the fridge first, and then later on you are using the ones you just bought. This can really help and makes a very big difference.
Thank you. And it sounds quite easy to do. Know what you have, label the foods that you have in the fridge. Even, I guess, it will be helpful for the cooked food as well. So let's all start doing this after this event. That's one simple thing that can make definitely a change. But here it comes maybe a little bit more controversial question. We all know that implementing the zero waste culture is something that feels good. It's the right thing to do. But besides that, what are really the other benefits? How to convince more restaurants and chefs to really join the movement? Radhika, as a restaurant owner, let's start with you. How do you think, what are the benefits of the zero waste in the restaurant?
So for me, I'll be very, very blunt about this. When you're adding more flavor, when you're adding more nutrition, and you're earning money out of this, why would you not go zero waste? Like gut-friendly foods, nootropics, ferments, etc. They're trending right now. But what do they all point towards? They all point towards not wasting and being sustainable. And they're saying that you can do that with flavor and flair and earn money out of it, and you can have plums through the year, but they'll be fermented maybe, or you can have whatever you like in vinegars and pickles, etc. And what you're by the end of it doing is you're picking up extra produce from small scale farmers, you're pickling, preserving, and not wasting by giving your consumer more flavor and earning money out of it. So I would definitely say that there are multiple benefits of going zero waste.
Right. Thank you. Definitely. Taste should be in the centerpiece, so everyone will be also inclined to try this food. But also, Chris, from your perspective, what are the benefits?
Well, absolutely what Radhika said, in terms of profitability, that's a huge thing. And we talk about that in professional kitchens and at home, right? Because if we're wasting less food, that means we're buying less food. But I think the other part of that that's really interesting to me is that when we attack food waste, when we focus on food waste, what we actually do is we then start to affect what we call the whole sustainability equation. We start affecting how food is grown, how much food is grown, how much energy is used to grow food, how much water is used to grow food, the amount of food waste that's eventually produced. All of that is attacked when we start with food waste. Because why? Because when we focus on food waste, when we focus on how do we make less waste of the food that we buy, then what happens is we buy less food. When we buy less food, that sends economic signals up the system to the people who are distributing, selling, and growing the food, and then they produce less, or perhaps they produce what we're actually wanting versus just lots of food in general. The net result is that we as a society, as a planet, we can start to get a handle on reducing the amount of food that we're actually producing. And that will have huge effects throughout the entire planet. So focus on food waste first.
Thank you, Chris. So what I ultimately hear is zero waste is, of course, is a good business to start with. It saves money at the restaurants. You don't need to buy extra ingredients as well. It ultimately eases the impact on the environment that our food systems are having right now. But what I'm curious to hear about as well, does it mean that the work in the restaurant becoming even more difficult for chefs? So Daniel, from your perspective, how zero waste is really changing the operation in the back house?
So in terms of difficulty, I think once the whole kitchen and the team is really adapting to it, it doesn't make it much more difficult. It's just the change what you do. So one thing what definitely changes is the way you purchase ingredients. So you are not purchasing in massive bulks anymore and just kind of hoping you will kind of get rid of it by end of the week. So you're doing smaller batch orderings. You have to look that you get local produce, that you are not really getting food from far away, because it can arrive at your place and it's already not in a good shape anymore. And I think a second big change is you have to be more adaptable. You don't really know what kind of leftover foods or food waste you are generating throughout the week. So if the menu on Tuesday has a certain product left over, you have to change maybe the menu for Wednesday, where you can incorporate this product into the menu. So these are the changes in the kitchen, what has to be done. But I think as soon as the chefs change their mindset, it works. It does. It should work really well.
That's great to hear. Also, it seems like a creative challenge for chefs. Also, when we are create a new process in the kitchen, obviously we want to use the whole ingredients that we have, purchase less, but also what about composting? Is it still an option that we have? Chris, what do you think?
Well, certainly we can compost. And, a lot of people will say very simply that, it's not a problem if we make lots of food waste, because we'll compost it, right? And when you compost it, the nutrients break down, they go back into the soil, and it works, right? Because it's kind of the full circle. But I really think that just saying we're going to compost the food waste that we produce is really, it's not really the whole picture, because the first question that we should be asking, whether it's in a restaurant or whether it's at home, is why do we have the amount of food waste that we have in the first place? So we always tell professionals, the first thing you have to do in the kitchen is understand how much food waste you're actually producing. And when you understand it, then the next step is to analyze where it's coming from, where are the disconnects, and why do we have food waste? And then the last thing is, once you understand it, then you actually set targets for how to reduce the amount of food waste that you're producing. And we see that has huge effects when you sort of do it in that linear fashion. What happens is people wind up buying less food, better profitability. At World Chefs, we have a whole program just to help professionals do that. But it's the same at home. Understand how much you have, understand where it's coming from, where is the system not working, and then attack it and reduce your food waste. Once you understand why you have the food waste in the first place, then what is left over, you do want to compost. But again, you want to start with the question why, and then talk about composting, but not the other way around.
I think that's perfect. And I think what we can have as a takeaway here, first, we really need to understand where the food waste is happening in the first place. And prevention is a key here. That's where we need to focus on. And then, of course, first we reduce, reuse, and then only recycle or compost. And I know that we have many chefs joining from around the world for this live stream, but as well we have many other people joining who are regular consumers who are coming to your restaurants, who are buying this food for their households. So next questions will be really, how can we support each other towards more sustainable lifestyle? How can we support restaurants as a consumers? And I would like to ask Radhika again, as a restaurant owner, what changes do you lately see with the consumer behaviors? And also, is there any pressure for you to change, or has it been done already?
So actually, it is exactly what Danielle said, and the truth is that the more flexible the restaurant is, and the consumer understands that, the more sustainable you can be. For example, when like what's worked for me is being sort of vague on the menu. So instead of writing baby spinach or arugula, we write market greens, so we can buy whatever we can locally from our farmer, whatever he has the next day for his as harvest for us. And that has really, really helped us as a restaurant. And our consumers been really, really understanding with the whole flexibility as well. And I feel like if more restaurants can get onto that and like have more menus which can change every day and not be so fixed on consistency. Yeah, restaurants can provide you a consistency of experience, but if you want a local sustainable restaurant, then we can't provide you consistency of flavor every single day. And I think when consumers come into restaurants now, they should be able to ask questions like, where is this food coming from? They should ask these questions actually, and how big is the portion size? And if you over order, which you shouldn't, like, please be slow in ordering. Like, it's all there to be served to you, but like, order lesser and ask your server, ask your chef, how much is it, and is it enough for one person, two people, and then take it away with you and eat it the next day. Just don't take it away and put it in your fridge and forget about it for the rest of the week.
Yes, food waste is really a shared responsibility for all of us. And I think from consumer point of view, we are in need to become more flexible with our expectations. What do we see on the menu in the restaurants? And I think a good point, Radhika, we also need to ask as many questions as possible. And it seems like consumers also ultimately becoming more curious about origins of food and the storytelling. So, Chris, how do you think storytelling in the restaurant business, is there a role to play there? Marketing, storytelling?
Absolutely. And I would say storytelling and communicating. We would always tell restaurants that if you are doing the right thing, be sure everybody knows, because that's part of how you do business. But I think that the storytelling piece is really important. What chefs want in their restaurants ultimately is to create differentiation, to create menu items that somebody's going to come in and say, wow, this is incredible. And so part of that is, as Radhika said, it's having flexibility on your menu so that you can tell the story of the greens and where the greens are coming from and why these are the choices that you, the chef, have made. But I also think there's a huge opportunity here to explain to your customer about our focus is food waste, and we are here to reduce food waste, and these are the things that we're doing, and then turn it back around to the customer. Again, Radhika, sort of touched on that a little bit, which is, everybody has a responsibility here. And so if somebody comes in and orders too much food and they eat half of it, or as I see on buffets all the time, people waste food. It's just unbelievable. They'll take a huge plate, they'll eat half of it, and then throw the rest out. So it's so important that the consumer also is part of that. And that's what we as restaurateurs, we need to communicate to our guests. We're doing all these things. Tell them the stories of how you have changed things in the kitchen, how you have reduced waste by 5%, 10%, 15%, because everybody's working together on it. Show them the results and then say, guess what? You also have a role in this, because if you consume, or I should say, if you order too much food and you're wasting it, you hurt our goals as a restaurant to be as zero waste as possible. So it goes both ways.
So communicate and don't be shy if you're doing already something good. And Daniel, also curious to hear if it affected anyhow also operations in the kitchen from your perspective, more curious, more mindful consumers. What's the difference does it make?
I think the biggest difference is that chefs have to really listen to their customers, and they have to, in one way, what they produce, and if they have a place where they really look into zero waste and all this, and they have curious customer coming, and that they should continue on this great path, because we can see online there is, not only online, but there is more and more being talked about these great places. And I think chefs need to kind of follow this trend, because we know that we have to change, and it's not only the professional kitchen, but also the consumer, as just talked about by Chris. So I think it is really important for chefs to follow their guidelines, what they want to do, if they want to do zero waste, but then also to listen for their customers, what they want to eat, to make sure, for instance, they get the food locally sourced, not from far away places, and that they really follow through with it. And I can see Radhika is doing a great job with that, and many more chefs will do it and are doing it already.
Thank you so much. Unfortunately, our time is running fast, but good news, these are the time for our audience to ask the question. If you haven't done it yet, please do make sure to submit them on the platform where you're watching this live stream. But in the meantime, I would like to ask the question that I guess many people watching this live stream were craving for, is to hear from the chefs, what are your favorite zero waste hacks, and which ones of them are you using at home? And I would like to start with Radhika. With your cook-along that is now placed on replay.com, you created a beautiful video showcasing how to cook amazing dish from the banana peel. Is it something that you also would serve at the restaurant or do at home?
Absolutely. We do have our banana peel chutney in the restaurant. So it's not the exact same dish, but it is using the same ingredient. And it's actually really exciting to see. I especially love this recipe because it's so reminiscent of pulled pork, really. And the person who was shooting the recipe was also like, I cannot believe that I have not eaten banana peel before, and how good is this? And it's just that once the consumer gets to taste something and it is delicious, they will go back for it. And why not? Like everyone eats bananas at home, and they're readily available and they're not expensive. And if you can create more out of it, then yeah.
Thank you. Daniel and Chris, what are your best food hacks?
Go ahead, Daniel.
So for me, I have to say, one of the smartest ways to bring from a professional kitchen into the home kitchen is called a cook and chill concept. So what it means is that if you cook something and you have some leftovers, make sure they are cooled down as fast as possible, because this allows the food to have a minimum amount of bacteria growth, and you can store it in the fridge for a longer time, which also means you can eat it for a longer time. So if you do a soup and you have done 3-4 portions and there are 2 left, right away after cooking, if possible, put it in the fridge, let it cool down quickly, and then it will last you for another 2 or 3 days. If you would leave it outside to cool, especially here in Singapore in a very hot environment, maybe the next day it would be already sour and would not be able to eat it anymore. So this is a really great tip for everyone to do.
Perfect. I think there is quite an interesting question. It's asking about the use of the ugly food and also its impact for the environment. What can we do with ugly foods, really? Are there any recipes? Do we need to pay attention how the food looks like? Is it important?
Maybe I'll just jump into that question real quick. But ugly food, and also to answer sort of the one from before, because Daniel mentioned soup, and for me, my favorite hack is soup. Just make soup, because that is a way that you can use up so many of the things left over in the refrigerator. You can take the bones from a roast chicken and boil it and make a stock, and that's a great way to do that. When it comes to ugly food, I think there's been a lot of focus on this, and I think the consumer attitude is starting to shift a little bit, that it's a positive thing to be able to use those foods, to call it out on your menu even, and to use that as a point of differentiation. Many times ugly foods are actually full of taste, full of flavor, and many times are actually better than things that are visually perfect. And so I think that there's a lot you can do with that. You can grind them, puree them, make soup out of them, etc., where no one's going to even know that it was an ugly food necessarily. So focus on it. And again, for professionals, call it out on your menu. Say you're doing this because this is part of your commitment to the planet. And oh, by the way, it's going to be the best food you've ever eaten.
Again, taste and storytelling. I think these are the key things that we hear again and again. So the next question will be around the food tech. We see that many apps are starting to appear in the recent times. Here in Sweden, it's Karma. In some other, it's like Good to Go. Many apps that are helping consumers to save the food and also help restaurants to minimize the food waste. So what's your take on this? Do you find this helpful? Do you think it's quite a game changer?
So here in Singapore and in our region in general, takeaway food is a very, very big business. And there are apps where you can basically, what you cook for your lunch at home, you do 3-4 extra portions and you can sell it out. I think this is a great way not only to make extra money, but also to, if you have something left over, to sell it and to ensure that it's not being wasted. I think the critical part here is that because it is takeaway, unfortunately, often it is being packed into plastic, into styrofoam and this kind of things. So if we already put so much focus on the zero waste, then also we have to make sure that if we create a takeaway menu, that we use sustainable materials to carry this product around. And this is something which unfortunately has to still be more adapted.
Thank you. And I think the question that many people could relate. Everyone know that leftovers is not it's a good thing to do. Yet we keep talking that they might be stuck somewhere in the back of our fridge because they don't look sometimes appetizing the next day. So what can we do about this? Leftovers, it is a solution, but how do we make it attractive?
Well, I'll jump in on this real quickly. The first thing that I would say when it comes to leftovers is that when you put them in the refrigerator, put a date on them. Put a mark somewhere on there the day that you put it in there, because as many times happens, things get moved around the refrigerator, it gets pushed somewhere in the back, and then all of a sudden one day you're like, oh, when was this from? And then it goes out. If you know what the date is, that's number one. In terms of making it more attractive, I think, I would just simply say it's about creativity. Because if you have a little bit of something left over and it maybe doesn't look attractive, what could you do with that? could you mix that into rice? Could you put it into an omelet? Make a frittata out of it where you sort of hide the appearance, perhaps, depending on what it is. Can you use it to make a sandwich? Can you use it to make soup? Can you put it into, a vegetable stew? I mean, there's so many things you can do. Another great little hack there is, depending on, again, what it is, add tomato sauce to it, mix it up, cook it, and then put it on top of pasta. So there's a lot of things you can do with those leftovers. If you don't like them the way they look today, play with them and make them into something else.
Thank you so much, Chris. All right, so that was the last question. Time really runs fast. Thank you so much, chefs, not only for your participation today, but for the tremendous work that you are doing. And for everyone, thank you so much for submitting your questions. Please don't forget to check the platform where you can learn even more about sustainable eating and cooking, replate.com. Let's eat up our leftovers and minimize the food waste, support the restaurants. It's our shared responsibility. Happy World Food Day. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.